Did not, yes. Now it started. Very good. So I'm Timo Pyhälahti from Finnish Environment Institute Syke, and I'm giving our third workshop online on the FCCUP EO-CROWD action on highlighting phenomena of interest in the satellite images, and then initiating crowdsourcing activities based on these things. So basically, this is the second round of workshops explaining what we are aiming and what we are doing in the HISP. And I hope that you all see the shared screen. So there is the contact information available. And we will start with the Tarkka platform, which is relatively familiar for all of the participants. And we have here the English version available. And as you see, since last year, a new button has emerged in the lower parts of the view, which is for observations, and it is possible to submit currently these three types of observations of water color, turbidity, etc., of algae blooms, and of ice and snow phenomena. I will demonstrate these things in a live system shortly, but I just took these screenshots for the users and viewers of the data of the slides, which are going to be disseminated, and also this recording will be disseminated as open data for the interested participants. So what actually happens in this view is that when you tick those boxes, you will get one dialog window for each of these types of observations, and then you can classify the things that you see in the satellite image, and the classification is fixed by us so that every observer of the user of the Tarkka user interface can submit similar types of data. I will actually highlight it also from the user view. So here is the Tarkka system. I browse to one of interesting scenes in there and so on. And then if I press in here, we will get the different topics available. A couple of user tricks for using this thing. This circle and the cross pinpoint where is the interesting stuff going on there in the, for example, in the water quality. And in the forms, when you have found the right place, you should press this highest button, so it actually gets the links, URL links for the image, and extracts all the observation times, etc., from this site, and then you can look into the options that are provided. This means that, for example, there is an interesting phenomenon on the water quality, that there's some kind of a boundary in the water quality. There's turbid water in this side and clear water in that side. So this is one of the issues that we are actually thinking that, and this I was actually looking at the image, and I think this is resuspension kind of data, but this is of course just one opinion of the crowdsourced data. So the idea is to allow people who are using the Tarkka system to actually submit the ideas of what are the phenomena that they are seeing in the image. And the first question asks for suitable options, and the descriptions of the options come in here. So it actually, there's that boundary between two distinct water masses would mean something like this. and then there might be some resuspension there also available or visible in the images, and this is what I will actually pinpoint to this specific location, and I would state that a major part or a major feature is there in the within this circle. So what we are not actually looking at is what is the content in this particular pixel. It is possible to state also that one, but what we are looking at is features. For example, these kind of boundaries between water masses. It's quite difficult to state in which part it is in here, but you can sort of highlight the area where the interesting thing is happening. And then this is a typical approach for this phenomena, that it is possible to tell what you are seeing in general, and then you can select the most important one. And this would be, for example, for selecting a map symbol to be placed in this location. And this is to actually classify the data what you are observing. For all of these forms, it's also possible that you can state something that there is no turbidity phenomena or humus-related or water color-related phenomena available at all, and to highlight that, okay, this was one of the images in which there was nothing, because it is also intended that you can actually look at several images and go through several sites and several times, and then with these kind of observations, you can mark for yourself that, okay, there is this was a date in which there was no boundary, and if we submit something like that on a previous image, and then when we have something interesting, we can submit the information on the next image that now it emerged, and then it is that we seen. So one can not just look in these two-dimensional things, that where is the phenomenon, but you can also highlight different times or satellite acquisition times, and also you can highlight different types of data. So if you select from here and submit and look at, for example, lake ice extents, this URL will change. This type information would then change to LIE, which stands for lake ice extent, and then of course the image would be of that image product and so on. So it's possible to combine different observations on the same location, but on different times from different satellite materials and so on, to gather information what you have been actually seeing. And then there is these three general questions that first is rather strange, that is this visible in the image? Yes, it is. As I explained a while ago, this is intended for gathering observations. So one of the observations is that, okay, we could, for example, have on location observation of the things, and then if I select yes, it says that, okay, please add a reference or a summary of the observation you had in here. But it could be that the image is cloudy, or there's just a tiny cloud over the area, so you would have to state that, okay, it's not actually possible to detect the thing that I'm seeing on the ground from this satellite image. Or it would be the intention to okay, we have a new participant. Good, welcome, Martin. So we could have a new piece of information in the middle of sequence of satellite images, which is cloudy, and we could mark that this image is cloudy, and that's why we are not including it. So it's a very sort of engineering-like approach that it is possible to gather all sorts of information, and this user interface is rather crude, and it's not that it could be. It's not like they make in Apple or with other high-tech companies, but this is basically one of the intentions, because what you are actually gathering is, wait a second, an example is actually in here. The observations you gather would actually turn into data like this. But you have selected something from the multi-value list, and several options are coded in here. There's an option selected in the single value list, and the option is coded in here. So these are numbers, and they are then transparent with different languages and for different uses and so on. And it is very straightforward to use them in mathematical models for processing the data, or GIS systems to actually highlighting the observations, because all of this data is available also from S3 REST interfaces. We will not go through those ones today. It's rather complex, and actually improvements are foreseen also in that department. So it's better to actually look at that in the final sessions. There has been some requests concerning those ones too. But the idea is that you can actually submit your information in here. There's some technical issues in here. For example, if you would like to replace an earlier observation, you could actually put to here the number of the earlier observation, and you can state your pseudonym in here. We are not gathering personal information of the participants in Tarkka, so nicknames and things like acronyms are going to be used, and then we are able to actually get a pseudonymized data which is easy to share, and there's no personal information restrictions. So this is the way I will just submit the data. Is there any questions at this point you would like to ask? Please raise your hand in the Teams systems, or just ask. Everything is very clear in here.
May I ask,
Yes.
Is it a form for everyone who wants to use this application, or
yes?
What is the aim of this fillings?
Yes, forms that are available in Tarkka user interface are available for everybody, but in the later part of the presentation, I will go into detail on what is actually how the things are actually being programmed and used for professional users who want to actually annotate data, or professional users who want to make sure that their data can be separated as different data sets. So this data is open for everybody and available for everybody. So basically, if I click in the end of the form, there is information on the service and the service account. This API ID is referring that we are using this Syke Tarkka iAPI account, and this is the way to actually recognize these observations in here. For example, this was done with a different account, and So we can actually pinpoint that, okay, this was actually submitted by our operators in here in Syke. So if you look at the individual data, you can see which service was used to share this data. But there's also a link in the end of the dataset which actually provides you the overview or sort of download of the data which was submitted, and that comes without the API IDE information, so it's just data. And these are the open observations you just received, and now you also might point out that one attribute in this JSON data is the link to an observation, and from that observation you can actually find that, okay, this was the feature of interest, and from here you can actually, there's the explanation that this is a shallow water area, sea bottom is visible, neither algae nor water color phenomenon is actually available in there, because this was one of the targets which often is confused with turbidity issues, because bottom sediments are visible, and it is actually not in the Finnish territorial waters, so we have a bit of a different map data from those ones. More questions, please. I suggest that we will go and have a look on the different observations we have. We just viewed this turbidity part. Then there is the algae bloom part. It is possible to state that this is a mass occurrence of cyanobacteria, and it is possible to highlight that this is a mass occurrence of phytoplankton in general. That means that this is, for example, a spring bloom, etc. So it is possible to highlight those kind of things. And then with those forms, you can actually submit in this additional information that what you think you just saw. Then we have the more detailed stuff also from the water quality and water color and turbidity and humus sedum observations, so that you can actually view those things in more detail. And as explained, this data then will be made available to the platform, which is storing them in data, and then you have a possibility to view them in different maps. And this is the typical example of the widget map, so that you can actually see the classifications in here. Perhaps I will also show this example in here. We have a few observations of this HISP highlighted phenomena of interest in these areas. Actually, when you are using this from Estonia, you actually would perhaps want to click on this select the type of map you are seeing, because this MML taustakartta is available only in Finnish. If you use the OpenStreetMap, you can get these better maps for Estonia. And when you click these images, then you actually are able to see the like human translations of this type of data. So you don't have to use this. You can actually use the different map visualizations of this data. And it seems that I could actually add the links to these three introduction map pages for you in the presentation, because the system with the maps is that it is actually showing limited number of days before current date. So the idea is that it would be very easy to visualize the observations that were done 5 days ago, or in a fortnight, or during last month, or during this summer, and so on. And this 5,000 days is several years, so this covers about 13 years of data, and then basically all the Copernicus related observations that you can actually gather with the Tarkka would be actually visible in these kind of image maps. And with these ones you can actually see what was the data like. But because there is the open data link available, there is possibility to download the JSON data and do a map of your own. And we are improving also the Esri REST interface so that there would be an interface for each of these questionnaires. Currently, it is actually disseminating information of each separate attribute. So there is a possibility to put a symbol for this one and a separate layer for this one, but they are not all in the same layer of the data, which is somewhat inconvenient for the users. So what we are actually updating is that this would be put to the same layer of GIS data. Would you like to go through this? What is the actual content of the questions and data submitted? Because with this 5,000 day data, it is possible to actually also to see what the explanations are for each of these things. We could go through these things if you want. We have still 1 hour time for discussions. I would like to, in the end, bit of show what would be the content of the CSEPIN activity, which is that when there's an observation submitted, how people could react to those ones. How do you think? Would it make sense to go through in more detail of what each form contains? Okay, perhaps we will look a bit to these ones. I think we could go to the as said, it is possible to state in the same image that there's several types of algae bloom observations, or to state that there is no algae at all. But we can go through them with this select one kind of thing. So the most remarkable observation for a single view of a satellite image could include that there is a cyanobacteria bloom in this area, or that there is mass occurrence is caused by other phytoplankton than cyanobacteria. So this is to highlight that you know that it is not cyanobacteria, and you presume that it is not cyanobacteria. Basically, it is possible for the users of the data to group these two things together, and in the post-processing phases. But it is also possible to distinguish these ones. And the third one is that there is no actual mass observation, but that there is low concentrations of algae and phytoplankton and cyanobacteria in a manner that the water color is changing. Then it is possible.
May I ask a question?
Yes. Yes.
I want to. I had my hand raised also, but
Sorry,
I wanted to ask that is there any quantitative criteria also from the algal bloom or not? I mean, some kind of milligram per liter or something like that.
This is more like for pinpointing the locations in which there is algae bloom, because this service is for not for professionals only, but also for the common people who are viewing at the images and would like to report that okay, there seems to be an blooming in here. So this is what would be the next steps. So basically, there's an observation submitted on this one, and then somebody could analyze this thing better and give better statements. If there is statistics available or something like that, you can actually state them in here. From these questions, you can actually see rather brief explanations of what is available. It is actually much easier to look at it from a bigger screen on your web browser with a bigger viewing screen. But the key thing in here is that you can actually use this place to submit or state what you have been observing on the site. This exclamation marks actually state that there is something that you should take into account with a high priority. And one of the high priorities is that you should not actually include personal information in a manner in here which actually would prevent the use of the data as open data. But the key thing in here is that you could state this information if you have it available. And the key criteria for the observers is actually given in these instructions. This is if people think that this is cyanobacteria and not this one, they select cyanobacteria. If they are in doubt, they select them both and state that okay, this is a mass occurrence of cyanobacteria, and the further analysis will be available. And as said, from this API ID, one sees what was the system which was submitting the information, and if additional information would be submitted via professional user system, then there would be a different API key to be used for submitting the data, and there would be limited access for people so that there would be, we would know already from this API key information that this is for example for professional users, and then we could analyze it further, make it better analysis of what the people have been suggesting, and to analyze the data in more detail. I try to follow the hands. Currently, I see no more hands, so I will continue. So, then that was it basically of the algae blooms. I think it is not so necessary to go into detail on these more technical blooms, and we can actually look also at the turbidity explanations. So there is a boundary between two distinct water masses. Then there is turbidity at the river estuary, which is very useful for highlighting that now you can actually see the river plume, and in certain times you cannot see the river plume, and you can actually pinpoint the extent of the river plume with this kind of a combination, that there is a boundary between two distinct water masses, and then there's turbidity from the river estuary. Okay, and then it is possible to highlight that there is a dark water, brown humus-rich water in the water area. This is something that could also be visible. So we can state that this is not like a bright plume, but rather a dark plume of water. Then one can speculate the source of turbidity seen in the image by looking and using these kind of points, that one can point out that this area is resuspension, that there is waves or water currents which have been mixing the water, and the bottom sediment is in the again in the water mass and so on. Or you can pinpoint that there is a dredging work that you have been observing, and this is a distinctive pattern because there is deeper water, and you can see the plume from the dredging or trail of the dredging sediment. And same applies of the dumping of the dredged sediment. You can pinpoint those ones too. And then there is one special case, that there is turbidity worth of attention, which means that there is observation of a turbidity or changes in water color which are of importance. For example, an accident or flooding event which has caused something extraordinary and so on. And there is actually a place to speculate and a place to give more information here in the additional information in this case. And then this could be then an optional for that one, that there is some strange piece of turbidity which is due to something else. You don't know that there has been an accident, or you don't know what is actually causing this thing. You don't know even if this is caused by a processing error because of clouds, or because of fog, or because of something else, or this could be like a surface phenomenon of pollen, for example, in the surface of water. But if you think this is a thing that is visible as turbidity in the satellite image is not actual turbidity, you should use no turbidity or humus, so that you can actually pinpoint that there is the things that you are seeing are not related to humus. And you can, of course, give more details on what is actually the thing that you are actually seeing, which appears as turbidity. I wonder if there's comments, questions on this one. I don't see currently any hands. Perhaps we will go to the ice part next. So the ice and snow are actually combined in this questionnaire because of an obvious reason. It is very different to observe snow on ice on lakes, and lakes which are frozen but that are not covered by snow. There is actually two distinct classes in the LIE data for the in this. Sorry, I will take this one from the English. just to highlight, there is this place where you can actually change the color, change the language of the user interface in here. So basically, you can also select Lake Ice Extent, and then select some of the observations available, or we can actually just check for an image. In this stage, this is a true color image, and we could actually see what the Lake Ice Extent product states about this one. As you see, it's not so. Was it from the same date? 11th of April 21. Sorry, was a problem because it was not available from the same date, but for example, these are cloudy. Now you can actually see that there is fully covered snow-covered ice and partially snow-covered or snow-free ice. These are two distinct classes in the products. So it is possible to highlight these things also in the observations, snowless or snow on ice. And it is possible that, to state that there is melting ice in this area, or there is open water area which is free of ice. And then it is possible to actually highlight that the things that you are seeing are not, there's no ice-related phenomena in the observation. And you can report certain special features on the ice. There could be an ice road on the track or other track on the ice, so you can see that people have been going across the ice, that there's these kind of tracks, or there could be cracks or channels in the ice so that you can actually see the open water in a very narrow paths in the ice. You can point out that there is areas of melting or thin ice. This is interesting. For example, if there's areas where there is electric power plants and so on are causing areas to be snow ice-free throughout the winter. And it is also possible to mark the edge of ice cover. So it is where the fixed ice and the flow, that is the ice rafts, actually end. So it is also possible to map those ones. And it is possible to pinpoint that there is separate ice rafts which are not connected to the main ice in this area. And then you can actually select one of these as the key observation, or pinpoint that there is a lot of things going on in a certain area, so there's many kinds of observations. I wonder if there's any ice-related questions. Should we go in more details in these ones? I don't see any hands, so I guess that we could briefly go through the snow-covered part, because, as said, because we are gathering the information of the snow cover in the same time, it is also possible to highlight what is the snow cover on land areas around the lakes and around the sea. And basically, you could actually select one of these things as a classification for the whole area, or the cross the particular you could highlight that, okay, in this cross area, the ice situation is as follows, or something like that. Or you can actually, with this multiple selection things, select what kind of snow cover things there were, some fields which were and open areas in the land area which were open, and some of them were really snowy and so on. And you can select a couple of these things for the different areas that you can actually see then, and then you will select one which is the most pronounced and one which is most descriptive of the area that you are using. This is a very dependent of the resolution of which you are actually looking into the images, but you can see the logic when you are actually gathering the data. I wonder if there's any questions or if there's special interest on the snow and ice issues. Should we go through these things in more detail? I see no hands, so I suggest that we could go in more detail to what actually this stuff is actually meant for, because in Finland we got all the citizen observations finally into the same platform. We have this Meriviki system, which is the citizen science platform. You can write long texts and gather lake and user-specific data sets from certain lakes to this system. And all the observations submitted to this system are actually copied to the same CitOps-DB platform. And then we have this vesi.fi, in which you can also submit certain kinds of observations. Very many of them are similar as the ones available in the Järviviki. And this is exactly the point, that we have different systems that are used by different user groups. This vesi.fi is water.fi is for an information service on water-related warnings and water levels and abundance of water for agriculture and so on. So it's a very different service, and it has very different user domain as the Järviviki, which is more like a hobby place. This is for professional or people who really need the data kind of service, this vesi.fi. And the idea behind these ones is that you can actually submit the similar kind of observations from different services, and you have even this embedding code develop provision web page from which you can actually generate the code for actually setting up this widget. And then you will just need the widget, which you can actually get by contacting me or the havaitsemaan at syke.fi, these contact details and so on. And basically, if there were some people from Estonia who would like to have an own API for these things, that would be possible. But I suggest that you would actually start during this summer by looking at Tarkka and submitting informations for the open domain from the Estonian lakes and using that kind of data for Estonian lakes. And then the idea is that you would get this kind of a widget code, and you can set up the widget how you actually how you want to display this. How you want to display these observations, and what kind of texts do you want to have on these ones, and what changes the color of these things. This these points, but it is also possible to directly connect to the open data and use the data in your own systems. For that one, I suggest that you would wait for September, because then we will publish the HISP related layer services, in which you can get all the information you submit in one of these forms in one line of as one event on the GIS data, so that you can get better use the GIS systems with this attribute data instead of having them as separate events. So questions on that one? Or comments? So the next thing is actually about what to do with the data. As said, we are submitting observations through these kind of questionnaires that we are generating and these kind of filters. And we have these kind of machine readable interfaces in which you have the information in JSON and to which you can actually submit the data that you want to submit as JSON. But it is not just observations that are being submitted. Also things like reports on places where there has been water work renovations are actually submitted to this same system. And this means that we can actually combine these observations to generate this so-called monitoring interest, seurantakiinnostus. And we will go in next stages in more details into that. But before looking it in more detail, I wonder if there's any additional questions of Tarkka. No questions. There's still one thing I would like to point out, that we had to change some plans concerning the original plans concerning Tarkka, because it is obvious that for different countries and for different languages, these questions don't translate like one-to-one, and there might be different instructions you would need to give for the pseudonymization and so on. And there could be different instructions for users which you would like to provide with the information, because in the form there is actually brief instructions on how to submit and how to use in the systems the information that you have been submitting. And these might be different from one country to another country. So what has happened is that instead of having a single dataset to which these HISP questions go on, for example, on algae blooms, there is one dataset for the Finnish language observations and another copied lookalike service for the English-speaking systems, which are now available for Estonia. In later stages, we could do the translation in Estonian for the Estonian users, and then there could be more instructions provided for the services and so on. And we could combine this one to the next versions of Tarkka, etc. But as you may know, Tarkka will have a next generation of user interface coming up I think during this year. I'm not actually quite sure of the latest information of the release schedule, but it is anticipated that very many of the services that are currently available with this old Tarkka. This will change for the next summer, and these HISP observations will be available in this old Tarkka service, and this will be then used also for the next year. I wonder if there's any questions on that one. And the one thing to point out in here is that with this map use, in which you can actually see all the available data, there's also links to the English description of the same data and the Finnish description of the same data. And you actually might notice that if you look them in more closely, and if you translate the texts, the observations are identical, and the numbers that you are getting are identical. So it's a lookalike, but there's a different structures, some different structures in the data, and basically you can notice from here that okay, this is actually an English-speaking service, because there is this in this code for the data, there is this English data. Actually, in the description in here, you can also notice that there is a reference to the original Finnish-speaking data submitted with the Finnish service. There's this small beauty error because of this approach, that certain fields like this observation time will be in Finnish and in English, similar in all of the systems. But it is also the intention that in the future this HISP service would be directly used by different systems of, for example, Estonian governments or Finnish governments or government or for municipalities, etc. So you could actually access submit to this service directly, not by using the Tarkka user interface, and that at that stage you can make a better user interface for yourself in a very similar manner as was used in the this vesi.fi. As you see, the form is different, and they have actually then direct access to the database without using the form provided the SITOPS widget. So basically, we have this system of highlighting information, what is of interest, and this is possible to be done in a different languages. And then the next thing that we will look into is this CSEPIN. For example, one would like to translate English-speaking observations to Finnish for the Finnish maps, and one could want to analyze further an AlgaBloom provided by the observers. And one could want to ask the local observers information on things that they have seen on location, and this is what we call a CSEPIN service, crowdsourcing service for phenomena of interest. And this is the topic of the remaining part of my presentation. So if there's, and I would like to highlight that this concerns also the possibility of requesting additional Earth observation data. That could mean tasking, for example, a satellite constellation to take an image of an area of interest where we know that there's, for example, a flooding event or special event, an accident or something like that. Or this could be a request for Earth observation finding data. So that would mean that there's an interesting image that you see in these old images, for example, and you would like to see if there's a higher resolution data available. And the idea is also that, for example, there could be reports on actions, for example, that there has been, somebody has corrected, for example, a structure in these water renovation systems which was observed to be broken, or someone is actually making a new skiing track if it seems that the old tracks were covered by snow, or these kind of things. Or if there's an action on the site, for example, that somebody has made a renovation on the flow of water to a water body. So then the follow-up actions would be to see if that has impacts on water quality currently or in the long run. Questions on this general idea? I try to see if there's hands risen. Currently, no. And then, yes, please go ahead. You are muted.
Sorry. Will it be in the future like operational service, and everyone can look where users detected some features on this application?
Yeah.
Or just
currently,
and,
yeah.
How?
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. I showed you the maps on looking at the images. So this is the way to actually see where there has been observations of algae, for example. Currently, there's just few of these observations in HISP available. These are coming from Tarkka, and the idea in Tarkka is that you don't see what others have actually submitted of the same site, because we would like to actually have unbalanced and not pre-tuned and pre-estimated stuff from the observers. We don't want people to copy the observations of the earlier ones to submit their own, but we would actually like to see if they are observing the same thing. And this is one design decision made on the Tarkka, so that we will only get these kind of observations. When we get the better layer system for the GIS data, there might be some maps which would be available, but it is not intention to show the users who are submitting data from this particular image that there was already an observation of this kind submitted by somebody else, and so that the people would use their own eyes rather than actually using the or submitting the same observation. I wonder if I was replying to the question that you were asking.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, good. And this is also why it could be, you are free to ask anonymous uneducated questions. For example, you could point to here and state that are these phenomena due to the bottom visibility or are these due to turbidity, and put a question mark in the in this last part of the open data. So this additional information could contain questions. And this is what I will show you actually Next, wait a second. Okay, here. Perhaps we can actually. I will go through the technology first. Basically, any type of CTOPS observation can be used to start this chain of events. You will set up a monitoring interest to be monitored on a site or on locations, and this is also a form in the much like the observations forms that you state that okay, this is the type of observation that I would like to receive from this area within this range of the center point that was defined, etc., etc. And there's another form for submitting the function of change of the interest as a function of time. And then there will be a definition of events which then actually trigger this kind of interest. That means that if you want to have observations on, say, water quality, you can actually trigger them by water quality and stating that, okay, this would happen 5 days later to actually make a time series. Or you could actually ask that, okay, there was an observation of water quality. Please trigger me a request for clarification that if this was actually something that is actually of good quality, or if this should be rejected or accepted. Or you can do more complex features that, for example, if there's snow melt, you would actually ask for height of the water from the locals. So if the flood is actually rising because of the ice melt and snow melt. And the monitoring interest, as explained during December, is typically done so that there is a period in which it is possible to do validation. So in a couple of hours, the observations would look about the same. So and you could actually observe the similar feature. Then there's the same feature. Then there's the similarity time that the things are a bit same, but there has perhaps been some change. This would typically mean that there is a lower interest in getting more observations because we would actually like to receive observations which confirm or disagree with each other, so we can actually analyze of what is the actual status on the site. And then there is the possibility to reobserve in the same location, so that there would be after 5 days there would be a new observation, and that basically could trigger a new observation again after 5 days, and we could get a time sequence. And there is actually a score associated, so this will result into a function which gives you points which can be used in these serious games. And it is possible to define additional systems of calculating the points, and you can, for example, use those ones to calculate what was the value of the observations that you made. And you can give extra points if there's, for example, enough validation observations in this time frame or enough of observations in certain areas, etc. And this is the typical organization of these things, that there is citizen observations coming in on site, which means that somebody is there on location to see what is the water quality. There is HISP observations from Earth observation. And then there is potentially defined specific sites for which you define these kind of interests. And you could, in principle, also feed in observations automatically or requests automatically that if observations would be triggered by a certain event on a certain location, and then we will just define the function as highlighted in the forms before. I wonder if there's actually any questions concerning this technology and this approach. The key thing to actually reply with this monitoring interest is to state what to observe or what to do next. It is important to notice that this might be an observation which is requested, or one could request that, okay, do something and send us a report of what you have done. For example, go and clean or some kind of a measurement device on location or something like that. And when there's a report by the person who has done the cleaning, there is information that, okay, now something has been done. And then there is the CSEPIN process, which is actually that there is things are being done because of these requests and these monitoring interest indications. And basically, in the end, there is some report on of the phenomenon of interest or which was achieved. So this can be really straightforward, or this could be more complex, that there's a chain of events which must follow each other and so on. And then we can actually calculate the scores for the observers for these ones for guiding them in real time. And then we can actually use the same or different method of calculating the points for calculating the dataset value of the data that was done and observed in real time. And there's a big difference in theory in between these two, because you can also include in this CSEPIN process validation of the observations, as explained in the next steps. And this means that we could get really faulty and erroneous data from citizen observers. We could get better observations by professional observers and producers of the data, but they might actually reconsider the situation when they see the whole data set, and they could want to resubmit or correct or even reject some of the older inputs of these things. It should be highlighted again that as with the JärviWiki, these services are intended for professional users and citizen observers alike. So it is possible to use these applications also for professional work, and by this API ID features to highlight which were done by whom, or to use, of course, the pseudonym information to highlight who was the submitter of the data. But the idea is also to enable processes that require some expertise. For example, this requesting of Earth observation data. We could arrange it so that if there's requirements from the local administration that, okay, this is an area from which we would like to have, for example, an ice eye image, they could use HISP and the texts there that, okay, please, this is an area worth taking an image of, and stating these kind of things, or there could be a special form for submitting such requests by the local municipalities or local rescue workers and so on. And then in the end of the CSEPIN process, operators who decide if there is a quota for and funds available and rights to prescribe and possibility to program, etc., etc., etc. ISI information, then this acquired extra information could come out of there. Or this could happen for something like spot images or high resolution data or the high resolution optical data from one Atlas services, etc., etc. Questions in this stage? Yes, I didn't quite hear it, but I could hear that if this is more like just a speculation, we have actually set up these requests and systems for pointing out that, okay, there would be a need for SAR data in, for example, in this area. We did a bit of an internal demo internally in Syke on this one, and we could actually pinpoint that, okay, there would be images which are then actually programmed and pre-scheduled in there. And there's actually several phases in getting data, asking for the data, and then there could be a scheduling of the data available. It might actually not work out. We could actually have identified data from the old services and sources, but it needs to be processed, or it is actually being acquired by the instrument, but it has not been processed yet. Or there could be sources of data available already somewhere, and we could provide an URL. And then we could actually also highlight the end of the availability, that the data is no longer in the online access mode, so that or whatever end product visualization there is in the end of the URL. And there could be even references to new interpretations, that we requested one interpretation of certain type of satellite data, and it was made available. And then this will then be actually turned and reinterpreted and resubmitted. I wonder if there's any questions on this one. So when we analyzed the use of the system, we noticed that actually we would also need this kind of a triggering system for the on-location activities, so that there would be. It is nice to have this kind of service, which we have actually earlier demonstrated, in which we have the monitoring interest on certain locations. That, for example, there is a dot in here which identifies that, okay, in this area there is this kind of score available for these kind of observations, and there would be an urgent need for a new observation. Well, this is a fake one. This is just for demo, but it is basically to highlight that, okay, it is possible to show these things on a map already, and we are actually improving these CSEPIN what to do next maps in the project, and we are making an editor for these things, so that any user of the service could actually themselves identify what they would like to have on those locations. So it would not be only the responsibility of Syke to submit these interest settings for these kind of chains. And what this level of interest basically means, that we could actually state that, okay, if the interest in this location would go beyond 100%. It is actually obvious that nobody is actually looking into these images seriously, and nobody is sending this data. So it could be an information for the next phases to take place. And because we are putting data in open domain, other systems could react to these settings. So there could be somebody who is committed, for example, to go to the location if the value rises above certain level, and then okay, we could send an email based on this thing for a person who has given us the okay for actually submitting such things, and it could be important for them to actually be able to commit to this work, because this is something that we in the long run could also use for paying for services rendered. So this would not be just voluntary work without payment, but this could be something that is used to guide on-site observers, and they could actually receive compensation for the work that they have done. And then there could be decisions that, okay, this was worthwhile, and how this was actually made. And then we would actually also need a system for the participants to highlight that, okay, I am interested in providing a service at this level at this level of interest. I wonder if there's comments on this one. Are you still following me, or is it too obvious or too complex? How do you think of the idea in general? So no comment. I will briefly highlight what this actually means in the context of the project. We could set up this kind of sequences in which additional analysis of Earth observation data would be done in addition to this demonstration of what we did with the ICE-I data internally. And then we could actually see what would be the perhaps good topics for these kind of things in the operational context for the roadmap, because in September meeting on the September 27th in 9 o'clock we have the next meeting openly in here, and we would discuss how to continue with these types of developments after the FCCUP activities. I will also highlight some of the things that will be and partly are already available for the FCCUP activities behind the scenes. As you see, this A is stuff that is available for the Tarkka turbidity observations and other water quality, water color related stuff, algae bloom related stuff, ice and snow related stuff, and then we have an internal sort of type of submissions for actually analyzing the data coming from these things. And the idea is that we could do this kind of an internal campaign management, so that we could highlight observation sites which would be available for this practical CSEPIN activities. And this means that for any point or location, we could be able to sort of define what is observed where and how far away, and in what time domain. I wonder if there's any, and this is something that would be available for the these brownish things would be available also for the users of the system. And of course, they could run something like this also internally, but this is something that we would not work ourselves. So I wonder if there's any questions on this one. No. We are getting a bit of short of time, so this is basically what I explained, that there will be these tests on the CSEPIN too. We are late on the CSEPIN implementation, but I think on September there is more to show for you on this one. And one of the key things that is actually needed for CSEPIN is thing for which it's actually worthwhile to think this issue, that we are getting data from different systems to our common platform, and we would need a system for highlighting and annotating if the data is good or not, and deciding if we should reject this thing from the open data, and confirming what to do with the data. And for this thing, there will be a priority and privilege requirement for different services and providers of the information. So we would basically make it so that these different APIs, which are actually indicating the sources of data, they could have different priority to, for example, to confirm that, okay, let's take and reject this piece of data. There could be additional user-specific ranking systems also, but this is not what we are going to be implementing in this project. Basically, we would do crowdsourced method of actually deciding from which APIs are first of all allowed to confirm, for example, and decide which observations are good and which are to be rejected from the open data. And then there will be also a system of annotating how this was done and because of which inputs. I will not go into detail into this one, but this is a system that was outlined for further development of the CSEPIN. I wonder if there's any comments or questions on this so far. I will not go into detail on the actual practical implementation of these things, but I will just leave the contact information in here, and I would like to remind in the end that on the 27th of September there will be a hybrid meeting in Syke for input on these things and for outlining the roadmap for further development. During summer there will be also a questionnaire or survey being submitted for all of you who participated this one to get more input of your ideas and feelings of the system. Any comments so far? Yes, Kesti, please.
I have a quick general comment. You told that there will be a newer and better version of Tarka coming in next summer. Do you already know what will the major changes will be there?
It is well. that's a bit of a bigger topic. Perhaps it would be better to dwell into these ones in the September meeting.
Sure.
And then we will also have a better idea of the time schedule and so on. But there is, for example, one of the topics that the people in Finland have liked is the carousel of images, so that there is pre-selected sites as the observation sites which are of importance, and there is always the best available images are being actually selected for them, and this is also something to connect with the HISP information and gathering observations of this type. This is something that will be also a topic for the 27th of September meeting. I will ask for a short presentation of forthcoming improvements on Tarkka.
Thanks.
Okay, our time is up. If there's no further comments or questions, as I see, I will send you a survey before July, and it will be open until September, couple of weeks before the meeting, so that we can analyze the results and to get your ideas and so on. So please use the HISP service available in Tarkka and submit your information. We will also implement and include observations. I will include the list of maps highlighting the properties for you as one slide for the presentation material. Good. If there's no further comments, I will thank you for your participation, and I will stop the recording. So if there's any additional comments, you can ask them after the recording too. I will stop the recording now.